You remain positioned upon a ridge 15,000 years past. Beneath you, a stream carves across the basin. Past this stream, pastures extend toward the skyline. There are no fences, no walls, no marker declaring you have just stepped inside, anywhere. The earth beneath your toes is owned by nobody, or perhaps it is owned by everybody, which practically equates to the identical outcome. You might wander across any path, for as far as your limbs could bear you, and you might never encounter a frontier. Never present any documentation. Never be informed you cannot remain exactly here. Throughout the initial 290,000 years of mankind's timeline, this remained the standard. 0 countries, 0 nations, 0 boundaries, only Earth and humans atop it. But later, sometime during the recent 5,000 years, someone conceptualized a notion so dominant that 8 billion individuals presently arrange their whole existences concerning it, while most among them have never really paused to question where it originated from. So how did mankind create states? The explanation is rarely straightforward. Moreover, it does not begin exactly where you believe it. Let us commence with what existed beforehand, since throughout much of human history, the reply to, "Where are you from?" wasn't any location. It was your lineage. For approximately 96% of this species' span, mankind survived inside tiny wandering tribes containing 20 to 50 connected members. 0 lasting addresses. 0 set territories. You traveled whenever the resources migrated. You connected with a band of humans rather than tracts of Earth. Furthermore, this collective was bound united by something quite distinct. You recognized everybody within it individually. Robin Dunbar, an evolutionary researcher from the University of Oxford, released a study during 1992 through the Journal of Human Evolution, suggesting that our primate brain possesses a mental cap regarding the amount of steady interpersonal connections it could handle. This figure equals roughly 150. It has lately become titled as Dunbar's threshold. Under 150, you can understand who everybody is, who they are connected with, whom they owe favors toward, plus whom they do not get along beside. You might rule through chatter, through standing, through the silent influence from peers who recognize your identity. Beyond 150, this framework collapses. You cannot individually monitor 300 interpersonal bonds. You cannot recall each grievance, each obligation, each partnership. Thus, whenever this framework collapses, you require something novel to keep societies united, something larger than your genetic lineage. Consider exactly what this implies regarding the creation of nations. Each nation across Earth currently holds way more than 150 residents. India boasts 1.4 billion. Iceland claims 380,000. Even Vatican City, the tiniest acknowledged microstate, houses about 800 continuous inhabitants. None of them could operate utilizing interpersonal connections exclusively. Every specific one among them demands some framework which Dunbar's mind was never designed towards. The state represents the solution, yet this solution did not manifest instantaneously. It required thousands of years. Moreover, it began alongside a choice which many individuals do not consider to be political in nature: the choice to cease roaming. Near 12,500 BC, within the Levant, a society presently termed the Natufian accomplished something extraordinary. They remained stationary. Dorothy Garrett initially discovered them during 1928, excavating at Shukba Cave, inside what is currently the West Bank. Subsequent diggings near Ain Malaha, directed by Jean Perrot, commencing during 1955, uncovered rounded rock dwellings, milling implements, caching trenches, alongside structured graveyards. Those were hardly transient campsites. Those represented settlements, inhabited continuously, through inhabitants who had determined that this specific tract of Earth constituted home. So here lies the fact which counts regarding the history of states. They remained entirely hunter-gatherers. They had not discovered agriculture beforehand. They established roots initially and worked out farming afterwards. Why might this matter? Since establishing roots alters your connection alongside the earth below you. While you remain nomadic, territory becomes a commodity you traverse across. While you remain rooted, territory becomes a commodity you develop upon. You cultivate it. You cache supplies upon it. You inter your deceased within it. Furthermore, whenever you have interred your predecessors somewhere, this soil becomes no longer merely dust. It embodies identity. Researcher Colin Renfrew contended during a 1973 essay for World Archaeology that Neolithic megalithic crypts alongside structures throughout Western Europe operated like boundary indicators. You place your deceased into the earth to warn everybody else. This tract pertains to those descendants who originated from these remains. The initial boundary indicators were never barriers. They were sepulchres. Hence, this represents the initial spark of a nation. Never a statute, never a military, a gravesite. Yet gravesites alongside dwellings proved insufficiently strong to unite massive populations of individuals together. For this, you required something which might link outsiders, individuals who had never split a feast nor interred a kinsman inside the identical soil. You required a collective faith. Near southeastern Turkey, within a location named Göbekli Tepe, German researcher Klaus Schmidt started digging during 1995 and discovered something which did not match the accepted chronology of society. Gigantic T-shaped limestone columns, reaching to 5.5 meters high and massing as heavy as 10 tons, etched with beast figures and organized into rounded compounds. They get traced to approximately 9500 BC. This means 6,000 years preceding Stonehenge, 7,000 years preceding the pyramids. Now here lies the section which counts regarding our narrative. Those humans who constructed Göbekli Tepe were not agriculturalists. They remained foragers. They possessed zero lasting communities nearby. They traveled from dispersed tribes throughout the area, converged at this location, and erected something magnificent cooperatively. Schmidt's deduction, preceding his passing during 2014, constituted a sentence which revised historical textbooks. First arrived the sanctuary, afterwards the metropolis. The urge to convene for collective ceremonies, to pray collectively, to engage with something grander than your personal tribe of 50 individuals. This urge could have compelled humans to establish roots during the initial instance. Spirituality arrived preceding farming. Faith arrived preceding boundaries. Consider exactly what this signifies regarding the creation of nations. Dunbar's threshold shows us you cannot individually recognize beyond exactly 150 individuals. Yet you might trust in the identical deity alongside 10,000 strangers you have never encountered. Collective faith represents the initial innovation which permitted mankind to collaborate past the boundaries of interpersonal connections. Furthermore, any state which has historically functioned operates upon some iteration of this identical mechanism, a collective myth which unites outsiders together. Near Göbekli Tepe, this myth was etched into rock. Nowadays, it is stamped onto your paperwork. Yet a collective belief does not forge a government. For this, you require something else completely. You require crops. Near 10,000 BC, within the Fertile Crescent, mankind started cultivating wheat alongside oats. Researcher Manfred Hoyne, alongside his crew, released a report within Science during 1997, utilizing genetic sequencing to map the cultivation of einkorn grain toward the hills of Karakadag within southeastern Turkey, approximately 30 kilometers outside Göbekli Tepe. Farming transformed everything, and not solely because it yielded extra sustenance. James C. Scott, a political scholar from Yale, released a manuscript during 2017 titled Against the Grain, which presents a theory many individuals have never evaluated. Scott contends that the earliest empires developed explicitly concerning grain. Never rice, never potatoes, never maize. Wheat. Plus the justification remains clear. Wheat remains observable. It matures during a foreseeable window. It might be quantified, split, cached, alongside relocated. In alternative terms, wheat might be levied. A tuber developing subsoil remains unseen. You might abandon it within the mud and collect it any time you desire. No one might tally your tubers while strolling alongside your plantation. Yet barley grows across a pasture, maturing all together at once, and anybody possessing sight might calculate the yield. Scott's premise asserts that the government, the entity which might ultimately evolve into nations, constitutes basically a crop tariff-gathering enterprise. Furthermore, everything else, the frontiers, the militaries, the administrations, the statutes, functions to render this levying achievable. Contemplate concerning this for a moment. Each document you have historically carried, each melody you have historically encountered, each conflict which has historically been waged regarding a boundary, points backwards, at minimum in portion, toward the reality that cereal is simple to tally. However preceding you might levy crops, you require barricades. Furthermore, the earliest recognized fortifications pertain to Jericho. Near 8000 BC, the community near Tel es Sultan, historical Jericho, constructed a rock barricade approximately 3.6 meters tall, alongside 1.8 meters wide. Connected alongside it stood a rounded rock spire 8.5 meters high, containing an inner stairway possessing 22 rock stairs. Kathleen Kenyon unearthed this during the 1950s and understood it to be the planet's earliest martial stronghold. Different researchers, like Ofer Bar Yosef from Harvard, have contended it represented a water defense. Scott, adopting his personal perspective, proposed the barricades surrounding ancient towns functioned as strongly towards retaining the working population enclosed as blocking adversaries outside. Ancient empires required to keep their citizens towards work, alongside levying. Regardless if Jericho's barricade represented a stronghold, a dike, or a work facility, constructing it demanded an approximate 11,000 man-hours involving structured effort. Someone designed it, someone managed it, someone nourished the laborers whenever they constructed it. This represents hardly a household endeavor. This embodies bureaucracy. Furthermore, bureaucracy constitutes the framework of a state. So here is where the narrative hastens, since whenever you possess extra wheat alongside barriers, the subsequent thing you acquire is disparity. Near Dra, within the Jordan Valley, researchers Ian Queet, alongside Bill Finlayson, discovered one among the planet's earliest recognized silos during 2009, tracing to approximately 9300 BC. It contained elevated flooring to stop dampness alongside pest destruction. Someone comprehended crop conservation exactly 11,000 years past. Furthermore, whomever managed this silo managed the crop reserves. Moreover, whomever managed the crop reserves held dominance. Kent Flannery alongside Joyce Marcus, throughout their 2012 publication The Creation of Inequality, mapped this precise progression spanning numerous societies. Equalitarian tribes possessed what they termed a philosophy regarding fairness, balancing systems including mockery, rumors, alongside exile which stopped anybody from becoming excessively dominant. Ponder concerning this. Throughout tens of thousands of years, whenever you attempted to declare yourself leader, your personal tribe might ridicule you until you surrendered. The shift toward disparity occurred whenever driven people worked out ways to bypass these systems, frequently through asserting some unique connection alongside the deities, or through hoarding cached supplies. Whenever momentary status evolved into inherited standing, you remained one stride removed from monarchy. Furthermore, whenever you possessed a monarch, you remained one stride removed from an empire. Plus, an empire represents a nation sporting a tiara. Yet an empire holding 200 citizens inside a mud brick settlement remains hardly the identical entity as a republic. For this, you require a metropolis. Furthermore, the planet's earliest metropolis represents where the concept regarding a nation truly starts to form clearly. Near 3500 BC, across southern Mesopotamia, a community named Uruk started expanding towards something the planet had never witnessed. Near exactly 3100 BC, it spanned beyond 250 hectares and sheltered and printed his discoveries into heartland of cities around 1981. Uruk constituted, through every logical parameter, the earliest genuine metropolis across Earth. Plus, a metropolis holding 40,000 residents faces a dilemma which a settlement holding 150 avoids totally. You cannot manage it utilizing interpersonal connections. You cannot rule through rumors. You require bookkeeping. You require uniform metrics. You require to track who owes what toward whomever. Thus, they created literacy. Furthermore, here is where the narrative becomes truly fascinating, since literacy was never developed regarding verses, nor prayers, nor metaphysics. It was developed toward bookkeeping. The oldest recognized inscribed artifacts remain proto-cuneiform slabs near Uruk, tracing to approximately 3400 through 3200 BC. Beyond 5,000 among these have been retrieved, while greater than 85% constitute bureaucratic logs. Crop allotments, laborer provision logs, animal catalogs. Denise Schmant-Besserat, throughout her 1992 publication Before Writing, mapped the complete development regarding literacy backwards toward tiny mud markers utilized regarding tallying commodities as long past as 8,000 BC. These markers became indentations upon mud casings, while these indentations became inscribed characters upon smooth slabs. The initial inscribed term was likely never deity, nor affection, nor conflict. It was likely some numeral placed beside an illustration displaying one sack of cereal. The nation, it appears clearly, was founded upon bureaucracy. Furthermore, alongside literacy, they mass-manufactured items termed beveled rim vessels, basic, unadorned mud vessels, each approximately the identical dimension, discovered within massive volumes near Uruk, alongside connected locations. Hans Nissen, alongside Gregory Johnson, contended that those represented uniform provision vessels, utilized through ancient government administrations to allocate quantified diurnal rations regarding crops toward laborers. The identical dimension vessel, the identical volume regarding sustenance, each dawn. This constitutes hardly generosity. This represents a compensation framework. Furthermore, a compensation framework constitutes a regime. Thus, alongside literacy, alongside administration, arrived frontiers. Genuine, structured, recorded frontiers. Near 2500 BC, pair Sumerian city-states, Lagash alongside Umma, battled regarding a tract containing productive earth termed the Guadina. Monarch Mesalim from Kish mediated this conflict near 2550 BC through measuring the boundary alongside raising an engraved monument to designate it. After Umma subsequently breached this pact, Monarch Eannatum from Lagash conquered them, alongside raised the Monument of the Scavengers near 2450 BC, illustrating his troops walking within ranks, alongside birds bearing away the flesh fragments from the vanquished. This carving documents the recreation regarding the frontier, alongside sacred hexes, toward anybody that breaches it. This monument, uncovered through Ernest de Sarzec during 1881, alongside presently resting inside the Louvre, represents one among the earliest documents concerning an official governmental boundary across Earth. Pair nations, bickering regarding where one concludes while the next commences, appears recognizable, yet a boundary dividing twin city-states remains hardly a true nation, hardly completely. A republic demands something greater, compared to a barricade alongside a streak into dust. It necessitates the concept that everybody within this boundary connects collectively, although if they had never interacted. Robert Carnero, a researcher from the American Museum of Natural History, released an essay within Science during August of 1970, which presented a hypothesis regarding why empires initially developed. His hypothesis remains termed ecological confinement. This premise appears uncomplicated. Inside regions where productive Earth gets encircled through physical obstacles, wastelands, peaks, seas, expanding communities, battle regarding a stable volume concerning agriculture. Whenever conflict erupts forth, the defeated cannot merely pack belongings alongside depart, since there exists nowhere to escape. They become integrated within the victor's domain. Settlement consumes settlement. Tribe consumes tribe. Thus, ultimately, you produce an empire. Carnero indicated toward the Nile Valley, boxed inside through wasteland across twin edges. Shoreline Peru, wherein slender stream basins remain squeezed betwixt the Andes alongside the Pacific, plus the Tigris-Euphrates basin. Every region wherein the initial empires autonomously arose. The nation, within this perspective, remains partially the result from topography. Humans created nations, since they became confined collectively, alongside needed to work out ways to survive, upon a magnitude their minds were never constructed towards. Plus the historical proof regarding this confinement, concerning the brutality which precedes when a boundary turns formal, remains older than many individuals realize. Near Jebel Sahaba within Sudan, a graveyard unearthed by Fred Wendorf during the 1960s held 59 corpses tracing to approximately 13,000 years past. At minimum, 24 among these displayed marks regarding brutal passing, displaying rock weapon tips lodged inside their skeletons. An examination directed by Isabelle Crevecoeur, printed within Scientific Reports during 2021, verified those represented hardly victims from a solitary skirmish. They constituted proof regarding recurrent, prolonged intertribal conflict concerning entry toward Nile supplies amid a phase containing intense aridity. Near Naturuk, around Lake Turkana inside Kenya, a crew directed through Marta Mirazon Lar from Cambridge University released discoveries within Nature during 2016, detailing 27 humans, approximately 10,000 years ancient, possessing craniums smashed open through dull impact, ribs shattered, alongside volcanic dart heads embedded inside their skeletons. Males, females, alongside at minimum one expecting mother. This was hardly a contest. This represented a slaughter. Furthermore, it occurred beside a coastline abundant with sustenance. Humans remained battling regarding geography, alongside murdering over it. Thousands of years preceding anybody decided to sketch a boundary upon a chart, alongside declare it a frontier. The frontier arrived afterwards. The brutality arrived initially. Inside Egypt, the Narmer palette, uncovered near Hierakonpolis, through James Quibell, alongside Frederick Green during 1898, displays monarch Narmer sporting the diadems from both northern alongside southern Egypt. It gets traced to approximately 3100 BC. Solitary leader, twin territories, merge towards a unified governmental body. This represents the framework regarding a nation. Plus, it got founded the identical manner numerous nations afterwards have gotten founded, through power. Yet here remains something deserving stopping for. Never every ancient society constructed its republic the identical manner. Inside the Indus Valley, spanning roughly 2600 through 1900 BC, a culture arose near locations like Harappa plus Mohenjo-Daro, which spanned a territory grander than historical Egypt, alongside Mesopotamia combined. Their metropolises got constructed upon exact layouts. Their blocks became uniform across locations, divided through beyond 1,000 kilometers, each obeying the completely identical 1 towards 2 towards 4 spatial proportion. They possessed uniform measurements, advanced plumbing networks, an inscription method which scholars presently cannot decipher. Furthermore yet, because researcher Gregory Possehl contended within his 2002 publication, The Indus Civilization, there exists virtually zero proof regarding castles, massive regal sepulchres, nor dictatorial monarchs. Zero massive sculptures depicting leaders. Zero depictions concerning militaries. Jonathan Mark Kenoyer from the University of Wisconsin has suggested that the Indus Valley might have operated like some type of alliance, ruled never through single monarchs, however through trading syndicates alongside spiritual leaders, that preserve stability via collective financial guidelines instead of martial power. Assuming this proves factual, alongside the argument remains entirely from resolved. Consequently, the Indus Valley provides proof that a nation does not require to resemble like Egypt. It does not need to commence alongside a subjugator. It might begin alongside a framework concerning masses plus metrics, alongside a shared pact wherein everybody utilizes the identical dimension blocks, which, whenever you ponder concerning this, represents a type of societal pact inscribed within mud. Yet although Egypt, although Mesopotamia, although the Indus Valley, although China, wherein the Shang bloodline remained ruling utilizing prophetic skeleton carvings, alongside copper ceremonial containers near 1600 BC, those represented realms, alongside empires, alongside coalitions. Hardly nations within the manner humans perceive the term nowadays. A contemporary republic demands a distinct element which ancient kingdoms did not possess. It necessitates that regular citizens, rather than monarchs, since they connect towards the identical society. Plus, this innovation appears surprisingly modern. The researcher Elman Service, within his 1962 publication, Primitive Social Organization, described a structure which numerous sociological pupils presently study: tribes, clans, fiefdoms, empires. Every unit a grander, highly intricate type regarding governmental structure than the previous. Yet the juridical scholar Henry Maine, publishing backwards during 1861, pinpointed the actual transition highly accurately. Inside ancient law, Maine detailed the evolution regarding mortal culture from structures founded upon standing, whom you stay linked towards, to structures founded upon agreements, where you reside, plus whatever you pledge. Throughout much of mortal past, you connected toward a tribe. A nation requests you to connect toward a region instead. This represents hardly a minor shift. This constitutes a restructuring regarding how individuals perceive themselves. The governmental theorist Jean Bodin described autonomy during 1576 as the supreme plus endless authority concerning an empire. Hugo Grotius, during 1625, established the foundations regarding global legislation. Yet the day many scholars reference toward as the genesis regarding the contemporary nation-state framework remains October 24, 1648, the Accord of Westphalia. Pairpax, endorsed near Munster alongside Osnabrück, concluded the 30 Years' conflict alongside the 80 Years' conflict. Those acknowledged the autonomy regarding solitary nations, created the doctrine wherein every republic manages its personal domestic matters, alongside forged the blueprint regarding any global boundary discussion which ensued. This framework concerning nations which presently splits the whole exterior regarding the planet across 193 UN member entities operates, within its foundational design, upon laws which got drafted 378 years past. Regarding some organism which has survived throughout 300,000 years, the contemporary nation remains hardly antique. It represents a heartbeat. However, Westphalia granted humanity the juridical structure. The psychological structure arrived subsequently. Benedict Anderson, inside his 1983 text, Imagined Communities, contended that any republic constitutes an envisioned society, since the citizens from even the tiniest republic shall never encounter most among their peer citizens, although within the consciousness regarding everyone resides the vision concerning their unity. You shall never encounter 99.99% among your peer residents. You possess zero interpersonal ties alongside them. You likely conflict against many among them regarding numerous subjects. Furthermore, nonetheless you sense, mysteriously, that yourself alongside them remain pieces from the identical narrative. This sensation remains hardly organic. It got fabricated. Plus, Anderson contended the apparatus which fabricated this was the publishing mechanism. Whenever texts alongside periodicals started spreading within common dialects rather than Latin, thousands of individuals that had never encountered one another might abruptly peruse the identical phrases during the identical moment, using the identical tongue. This collective literate encounter forged the sensation concerning connecting towards one solitary society. Publishing rendered countries conceivable. Commerce rendered them lucrative. Ernest Gellner presented one comparable thesis, the identical anim within nations and nationalism. His iteration appeared harsher. He declared patriotism might never arouse slumbering republics. Patriotism fabricates them. The nation remains hardly some organic truth uncovered through its residents. It represents an artifact, constructed via government schooling networks, uniform dialects, alongside common societal icons. While Italy merged during 1861, merely roughly 2.5% from the populace voiced mainstream Italian. The remainder voiced Sicilian, Neapolitan, Venetian, Piedmontese, multitudes regarding local tongues which could never comprehend one another. Massimo d'Azeglio supposedly remarked, "We have forged Italy. Presently, we need forge Italians." The Republic arrived initially. The citizens that allegedly characterized it arrived subsequently. Plus, the French uprising rendered the entire matter transparent. Section 3, concerning the Declaration of the Rights of Man and of the Citizen, embraced upon August 26, 1789, declares how the essence regarding supreme authority rests fundamentally within the state, never within the monarch, never inside deity, within the republic. This solitary phrase shifted supremacy away from thrones toward a concept. Furthermore, the levy en masse, the widespread draft edict during August 23, 1793, transformed this concept toward a weapon. For the initial instance across antiquity, each resident pledged martial duty never towards a master, rather towards a country. The republic remained no longer merely somewhere you inhabited. It represented something you might be requested to perish towards. Plus, occasionally, these boundaries originated through individuals that had never placed steps inside the territory at all. Upon May 16, 1916, Sir Mark Sykes, alongside François-Georges Picot, sketched streaks across a chart splitting the Arab regions from the Ottoman Empire toward sectors concerning British, alongside French dominance. These streaks held virtually zero connection towards the inhabitants that genuinely resided throughout there. Furthermore yet, these streaks evolved into boundaries regarding Iraq, Syria, Jordan, plus Lebanon. During 1884, near the Berlin Summit coordinated through Otto von Bismarck, delegates from 14 European empires partitioned Africa betwixt themselves. 0 African monarchs got summoned. Near 1914, approximately 90% from Africa remained underneath European imperial dominance, sliced toward provinces whose frontiers severed cultural tribes across half alongside compelled historic adversaries toward unified bureaucratic zones. Whenever these territories achieved autonomy during the 20th century, majority among them retained the imperial boundaries. The Organization of African Unity decided to act similarly during 1964, arguing how any effort toward redrawing them might unleash a pandemonium which nobody might contain. The boundaries remained. The nations they established appear newer compared to many assume. During 1945, the United Nations possessed 51 participant entities. Presently it claims 193. Throughout 1960 solely, 17 African republics achieved autonomy. The freshest broadly acknowledged nation across Earth remains South Sudan, that turned autonomous upon July 9, 2011, following a ballot wherein 98.83% elected to split away from Sudan. The globe remains currently fabricating nations. It has never halted. It might never cease. Thus, here stands the explanation. How did mankind create states? They achieved this through stages. Initially, they established roots, linking their persona toward a distinct tract concerning Earth, alongside designating it utilizing the skeletons from their forebears. Afterwards, they cultivated crops, generating excess which might get cached, managed, alongside levied. Next, they constructed barricades to shield the excess alongside those individuals that yielded it. Later, they expanded excessively massive regarding interpersonal connections, alongside developed literacy, administration, alongside official frontiers, to govern communities which zero solitary mortal intellect might monitor. Subsequently, they waged conflicts, which consumed tinier factions toward grander ones, particularly inside regions wherein topography granted the defeated nowhere to escape. Following, they created autonomy, the juridical concept that an empire possesses supreme power inside its frontiers. Next, they fabricated patriotism, the psychological concept that everybody within these boundaries connects toward the identical society, although if they might never interact. Plus, afterwards, they sketched streaks across charts, occasionally meticulously, occasionally utilizing a straight edge alongside a flask concerning alcohol during meals, alongside termed the voids betwixt these streaks nations. Proved this unavoidable? Nearly absolutely. Considering farming, excess, demographic expansion, alongside the mental constraints regarding the primate intellect, some type concerning massive governmental structure remained destined to arise. Carnero's confinement hypothesis, Anderson's envisioned societies, Gellner's mechanized patriotism, those entirely align toward the identical deduction from varied pathways. The likelihood that mankind might formulate a variation concerning a republic, considering those circumstances which evolved following the Neolithic transformation, remains approximately 90%. The precise outlines upon the chart, the precise titles, the precise banners, these remained flukes concerning topography, conflict, alongside imperialistic desire. Yet the notion itself, the belief that outsiders might stay tied collectively via common statutes, common dialect, alongside common myths, toward one unified governmental entity, this appeared inevitably approaching regardless of circumstances. Ernest Renan, the French thinker, delivered an address near the Sorbonne during March 11, 1882, titled, "What Constitutes a Republic?" His response, following rejecting ethnicity, dialect, spirituality, alongside topography, remained this: a republic's survival represents a diurnal ballot. It functions since the citizens within it decide, each dawn, to behave like if it operates. It remains never bound united via dirt nor genetics. It stays bound united via consensus, through shared remembrance. Furthermore, Renan stated, through shared amnesia. Amnesia, I might even declare historical mistakes, remains a fundamental element during the formation, regarding a state. You must entirely erase the victories, the internal conflicts, the atrocities which constructed the frontiers you reside within. Otherwise, the consensus crumbles apart. Tonight, you shall head homeward toward a republic. You shall likely never contemplate regarding it. Yet this republic, whatever it represents, remains newer than ceramics, newer than farming, newer than the hound slumbering upon your sofa. Throughout 98% from mortal past, it did never exist. Furthermore, the sole justification it functions presently remains that thousands of years past, somebody cultivated a pasture containing barley. Somebody tallied the yield. Somebody constructed a barricade surrounding it. Plus, somebody persuaded the inhabitants inside this barricade that they represented entirely the identical type regarding humans. This embodies whatever a nation means, a narrative which sufficient individuals trusted, for long enough,